Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time on my channel, thanks so much for clicking on my picture. And if you like what you see, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today is the long-awaited video all about wedding budgets. Now, I know setting your wedding budget is not the most glamorous part of planning your wedding. However, it is the most important piece of the puzzle. Knowing how to create a wedding budget and having that done at the very beginning of your planning process is going to make everything so much easier and more enjoyable for you in the long run. So I know sitting down and setting a wedding budget can be a daunting task, especially when this is your first time planning a wedding and you have no idea what things are really going to cost you, and therefore you don't even know where to start with making a wedding budget. So I'm going to make this super easy for you. I've got 3 simple steps to create your wedding budget. Just a disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about some statistics in this video and talking about what the average couple spends on certain wedding items. Just because the average wedding couple spends a certain amount of money on something does not mean that you have to do that. Your wedding budget will be tailored to you, and therefore you should only be spending the amount of money that you have allotted for yourself within that arena. So the first step to creating a wedding budget is to think of your overall budget. Now, your overall budget is going to be the max amount of dollars you can spend on your wedding in its entirety. This is the amount of money you're going to cap out on that you absolutely can't go over. To give you an idea, the average couple spent $36,000 on their wedding in 2019, and that's in the US, and of course this varies based on your region, what style of wedding you're having, and how many guests you include, but that might give you kind of an idea of where to start when it comes to setting an overall budget. So once you've figured out your max overall budget for your entire wedding, you want to sit down and set priorities for your wedding. This is something you and your partner should do. Physically sit down and write out what your main priorities are for your wedding, as well as your partner, and then compare them. When I talk about priorities for your wedding, this typically includes what I like to call the big 4. So the big 4 are 4 main pieces of your wedding that can really make or break your budget, and they're typically the 4 biggest, highest ticket price items for your wedding. Within this big 4, we have your venue. Maybe your venue is your highest priority. You want to make sure that you have a really beautiful spot, all-inclusive, somewhere that your guests can maybe even stay at, or that is close to hotel accommodations, Airbnbs, what have you. The second is catering. This includes food and alcohol. The third is your photographer or videographer. And fourth is flowers/decor. Now, when it comes to prioritizing, you might want to start by looking specifically at these 4 items and see how they fall on your priority list. So maybe you want a really beautiful venue that your guests are going to be awed by. Maybe your highest priority is having really beautiful photos to look back on after your wedding day. So sit down and figure out what your priorities are for your wedding day. List them out in numerical order and then compare them to your partner, and then come together and create a priority list that compromises and combines both of those lists. So once you've come up with your priorities list, this is where you can start allotting a certain amount of money to each category. For example, if the venue ranked number 1 on your list, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to spend the most amount of money here. However, you're willing to spend the most amount of money here by ranking it as a number 1 priority. And then your second priority, second highest, third highest, so on, you get it. So you go through each of your highest priority areas and allot a maximum budget for each of those categories. So if you have no idea how much these things are going to cost you, here are some average percentages that couples will spend based on their overall budget. For example, the average couple spends 15 to 20% of their overall budget on their venue. They'll spend 10 to 15% on food, as well as 10 to 15% on alcohol of the overall budget. Photos and video are typically 12% of the overall budget, and flowers are about 8% of the overall budget. Rentals and decor come to about 20% of the overall budget. So this rental and decor category is especially high when you have a venue that is not all-inclusive. When you're renting tables, chairs, linens, maybe a tent, all of the flatware that will be on your table, your plates, glassware, all of that is included in this rental and decor category. So, for example, let's say you have a $20,000 budget. You can expect to pay about $3,000 to $5,000 on your venue, about $3,000 on your food, and about $3,000 on your alcohol. This is a good starting point for what you can allot yourself in each of these categories with a $20,000 budget. That would give you a budget of about $2,400 for a photographer or videographer, and about $1,600 for your flowers. And this leaves about $4,000 for your rentals and decor. Now, once you have those items categorized, you can add up everything that you've allotted so far and see how it compares to your max overall budget. Then you'll know how much money you have left over for all those little things that will come up, any extra decor you plan on having at your wedding, your stationery, envelopes, attire, and everything else that goes into planning a wedding. This will also be helpful for you to see where you're allotting certain chunks of money and where you can cut back. So let's say that your overall budget is $20,000. You've allotted the 10 to 15% of $3,000 to alcohol, but you plan on buying all of the bridesmaids' dresses for your bridal party, and you don't plan on having a full bar, you just want beer and wine. You can probably cut back in this category a little bit so that you have more wiggle room when it comes to adding those bridesmaids and other attire items. By sitting down and figuring out your budget for each of these categories, photographer, catering, venue, flowers, and decor, it'll make it so much easier for you to figure out how much money you have. You don't want to just go in and set an all-in budget and then just make sure that everything that you're doing stays within that. You really need to make sure that you're considering each category of your wedding so that you can know where you desire to spend more money, where you can cut back, and how much money you have left over for any extra items that might come up. If you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not sure everything that you should include in your wedding budget, aside from these big four that I've talked about already, click the link below and I actually have a budget template that's already pre-made that has all the categories you'll need for your wedding planning, as well as all the little things that you might miss. I've also included the percentages that I've talked about in this video as well, so that you can stay on track and know how you're comparing to the average couple. So go ahead and click the link below for that, and hopefully that will make your wedding budgeting a little bit easier. I promise creating a wedding budget doesn't have to be as daunting and scary as it seems. Just follow these 3 easy steps. Make sure that you're categorizing your budget. Make sure that you sit down and have an overall budget before you do anything, and I promise you your wedding planning will be a lot more enjoyable. Comment below if any of these things surprised you or if you have any questions on wedding budgets at all. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week for another video on wedding planning advice and tips.